All right, I have Melissa Rubin here with us today. Melissa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Rubin. I am Ashburton's staff development teacher. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names here. I may have taught your child before. I was a third grade teacher at Ashburton for the last 2 years, and I am taking on this new role this year. So you are welcome to contact me about, like Ms. Alaraj, curriculum questions, instruction, testing, any random thing. I may have your answer.
All right, and I have our wonderful, amazing, stellar new assistant principal joining us today. Ms. Reese, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is my first year at Ashburton, and I'm so excited to work with you and partner with you this school year. I met many of you doing materials pickup, and I look forward to working with you this school year.
All right, she has been an asset since she started here. We are so fortunate to have her join us. Again, we congratulate Ms. Holly Hill on her new principal position over at Wayside Elementary. Do I have any other Ashburton staff members that are joining? There's a lot of people in the meeting. I want to make sure that we honor the work that you've been doing. If you could take yourself off mute and introduce yourself.
Oops. If you mean me, I'm Ralitsa Patcheva. My child is Vladislav Popov. He's in 5th grade. And I
thank you for that. I'm looking for Ashburton staff members to introduce themselves. So it doesn't look like I have any other in the chat, and that is fine because I know that they are very busy working through their preparations for tomorrow's sneak peek and for the start of the school year. So I do want to remind everybody that we, in addition to having this done through Zoom, we are broadcasting this live through YouTube. It's a new approach that we're taking, but those of you that have been with us for many years do know that we have a very large community, and there are certain limitations on Zoom. So once we hit the 300 mark, we are not able to take other folks into Zoom. We're working on some other approaches for principals to be able to do that through a webinar, which could include more people. But we've also been using YouTube Live. So if you are tech savvy enough and want to project this onto your smart TV, you can bring us into your living room with you. We hope that you are enjoying the show. So I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of today's town hall. So this morning I met with parents with no set agenda, with no specific questions, and I fielded questions for about an hour in the chat. Many of the questions resemble some of the questions that we've been receiving via email. I also sent out a Google form in advance of this meeting, and a few of you used that avenue to give me some questions to consider as we work through this town hall today. And then again, we met with kindergarten and new parents and even some of our veteran parents during the 4 o'clock hour to provide some updates on the Board of Education's finalized vote on the MCPS Recovery of Education Plan, which was done yesterday. So there's a strategic reason that we're meeting with the community today. And then also we've been releasing some other information. And again, we'll go over some of that information today because it had to follow the Board of Education's vote yesterday. So what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to move through some of the most common questions that I've received and actually provide some updates as of the 4 o'clock hour. So we got some great questions asked by the folks that joined us, about 100 plus parents who joined us for the last meeting. And we actually are already working on some upgrades and changes to make your lives easier. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those look like today. What I'm going to ask you to do is through the course of our meeting today, if you have questions, absolutely feel free to use the chat function on Zoom. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout, as well as kind of looking at it at the very end. I only have about a half dozen major questions that I want to work my way through, although they are meaty. But at the end, we're also going to reserve some time for you to ask questions via the chat. So with that, let's go ahead and get started here. The major question that we've been asked is, what does a typical day look like in an online learning program? So before we do that, I want to be able to tailor my answer here a little bit. So I'm going to use a poll function here, and you should see a question pop up on your board. Check all that apply. I am the parent of a student in blank. And kind of see we've got some middle school and high school parents here. I love this. I'll share the results here in a second once I see the voting wind down here. All right, we've got a really nice balance here, including some of our middle school families. All right, about 78% of the vote is in, 79% of the vote is in. I'm going to give it about another 10 seconds. I'm going to pause it and share the results. All right, so here's where we are. Congratulations, if you're a 5th grade parent, you're amongst the larger group, but it's actually a fairly balanced group of attendees that we have in this meeting today. So maybe we aren't seeing as many kindergarten parents because we just met with them about an hour ago and are covering some of the information that we covered there as well. Also do know that tomorrow's sneak peek is going to be a great opportunity to get even more and more specific information at the particular grade levels that you represent. So welcome to the middle school families as well. Some of what I speak with today will be relevant to middle and high school, but the major focus is going to be on elementary school itself. So thank you for giving me that idea of who we have in the audience. All right, so for the elementary folks, what does a typical day of learning look like? Well, I'm going to use an example that we used in the meeting we had with our kindergarten parents. This is a snapshot of the instructional schedule that I emailed to all parents earlier this afternoon. It's a Google Doc. You can actually sort, there's 6 tabs at the bottom. You can look at the grade level. And it gives you an idea of the typical day in an online instructional program at Ashburton. So there's time reserved for social emotional learning. That's a critical component right now, given the circumstances that we're operating in. We need time for our students to develop relationships with their colleagues, with their teachers, with the peers in the class. So we want to make sure that we reserve time for that. But we have the typical setup for English language arts. That's what ELA is. For mathematics, for art, for music, for PE, for social studies, science, and health. And then we obviously are building in specific breaks. So you do see that there's a large lunch block there from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. That's where students are not working, they're not live, they're not on camera. Families that need to access the meal distribution site can do so. Walter Johnson High School is now a meal distribution site. So you'll have information about that and how you can access those meals. But we provide about 90 minutes for that as well. We also have blocks built in throughout the day that I'll speak to in this presentation called student supports and targeted interventions. There are programs, research-based interventions that we'll be using with some of our students. There will be access to ESOL and other services, which I'll talk about as well. And there's also that time is reserved for teachers to work with families as well. So you're going to get information in the coming days from your homeroom teacher about setting up a check-in, a live check-in with the parents and the student in the first couple of weeks of school. They'll be brief, but there are opportunities to strengthen that bond between the parent and the teacher in the opening weeks of school. So I want to be very clear though, the schedule, what it doesn't spell out for you here, although it is articulated in the recovery plan and will be shared with you by the teacher, and you will see it in action, is that if it says that there's a 45 or a 60 or a 90-minute block, that does not necessarily mean that a student is staring at the screen for 45 or 60 or 90 minutes. I promise you that. I'm the father of an incoming kindergarten student, and I know that he's not going to be able to sit for 90 minutes and stare at a screen. He will do it if it has something to do with watching this Ryan kid unpack a toy. He'll do it if it's something related to the Avengers. But he has attentional needs that don't allow him to sit for a literacy lesson for 90 minutes. So I do want you to hear from me that time will not be spent live staring at a screen. You'll see it appear in different ways throughout the course of the day where the teacher might move the students to a breakout room, which just puts them somewhere temporarily while they're working on reading a book. They're working through their problem set in their Eureka workbook, which you received at materials distribution last week. They're writing something. There's going to be a lot of time where they're working independently. Especially early on in the year, teachers will be building those routines and procedures to make sure that actually happens. I'll talk about some upgrades and how we're managing all of that time. I do want to say that the emphasis on the district, and I'll pause here because I've said this at every juncture with parents today. I'd like for us to step back, if you were with us in the spring, and divorce ourselves from what we remember about spring continuity of learning. That was very much a period where we were managing a crisis. We got it up and running as quickly as we could. It was not a contingency that we had ever planned on. If you've ever seen the movie Apollo 13, there's that scene where they walk the engineers into the room and they dump certain materials onto the table and say, this is what we've got in the LEM. We need to figure out a way to filter out the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, so that they can breathe. And one of the engineers remarks, that's not a contingency we planned for. And they quickly have to get to work. So that was very much our Apollo 13 moment. And I do think in many regards we were successful. We also learned a lot, and you'll see some upgrades and changes as we enter into the fall. So we are obviously extending the day. The Montgomery County Public Schools Recovery Plan does align with the Maryland State Department of Education's parameters. Again, it's going to be reviewed again next week, September 1st. So we could see some slight changes after that. Obviously, those communications would come from MCPS at that time. But our emphasis is really, as we heard from parents in the spring, making sure that you are not having to manage this fully throughout the day. And so if you'll recall from the spring, your child had to watch a video independently and then complete some assignments independently. As a parent of children in the system, I found myself also having to manage that. I'd like to return to a principal role, but I know that I'm gonna have to manage my student, especially my kindergartner, a little bit. But the goal is that learning and that activity is self-contained within the day. You will also not see that with the student day ending at 3:15 that your child is gonna have 2 hours of homework. The most homework your child will have will be some reading. There are times built in throughout the week during that student intervention time where students could be working independently on assignments. There's time during the ELA and the math blocks for students to work independently on those assignments. And that time on Wednesday afternoon could be another opportunity for students to be working independently on assignments. We don't want to have students working on screens from 9 o'clock to 3:15 working independently and then have additional homework on the back end. We'd love for you as parents to just spend that time reading with your children. So that's a general overview of the schedule itself. Another question that we've gotten very frequently is, will I have to find things or hunt for things like I did in the spring? I got a tremendous amount of feedback and praise for our teachers for their approach to the spring. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear was, how could we make this a more streamlined approach coming into the fall? And so we've got a couple of upgrades that we've instituted. First off, and I love this example, and Ms. Rubin has been a leader in this regard, every MyMCPS classroom page will look the same at the landing page. So you as the parent can log in, or you as the student can log in, and it will have the same look and the same feel. It'll all be right there. You won't have 9,000 different links that you're going to have to search through to find material. This is what you will see. This is where you will find the information if your student needs it. I do want to clarify, though, that another question that came up about this is that when we talk about the MyMCPS classroom, what we're talking about is where the stuff is, right? So this is where the assignments are, the resources, the materials that students will access throughout the course of the day. But the learning will happen live on Zoom. So another upgrade that we made, and again, thank you to the parents who gave us this feedback, is that we're going with one Zoom link per homeroom, per grade level. So your children will log in with one Zoom link in the morning and they will stay on that Zoom link for the majority of the day. If they have PE with Miss O'Reilly's gonna log into that Zoom link when it's time for PE, and she's gonna do PE via that Zoom link. If it's time for an art lesson with Mr. Roth, he very much is going to do the same thing. If Miss Strauss is stopping by to do a counseling lesson, she's going to use that Zoom link. The idea is that therefore you don't have to manage that as the parent, and that we are bringing the people to the students rather than the students to the teachers. And so that was a big upgrade for us. We learned a little bit from some of those innovative school programs at Roscoe, Nix, and Arcola. And so we're stealing their brilliance here. Now, there will still be some other smaller Zoom links if you have to go to an ESOL lesson, or if you need to work with a special education teacher. Or in 4th or 5th grade, if you are going rotating to a different teacher for your math or your reading class, you will go to that homeroom link. But again, if you're staying with that teacher for that rotation, you stay right there on the Zoom and others will join you. So we are really limiting the number of Zoom links that our kids have to navigate throughout the course of the day. Again, based on feedback from the parents. So another question I got, and I joked with the parents earlier about this concept of office hours. So those of you that remember, and I'll speak to the elementary, I know that office hours in secondary were a very different approach with very different levels of feedback. But in the spring, we had these office hours that were built into the schedule where students could get to the teacher or parents could get to the teacher for a designated amount of time. I'll be honest to say that in some regards, they were attended well, and in others, it was crickets. And we have to say that in the spring, it was a very passive approach. We are doing away with the office hours concept in that it's no longer a passive approach. But again, those student intervention and targeted support times are really meant to be where students are getting additional support from the teachers if needed, where parents and teachers are connecting. The mantra from MCPS right now is that not necessarily will every student be involved in something during this time, but every teacher will be. And so you're going to hear some information from our teachers in the early days of school about how they're going to be connecting with you to set up times during this. And then we're going to transition to periods of intervention and other supports. This also may be where students are working with the ESOL teacher, with the special educator, or someone else in the building. So we wanted to say that we understand that we are no longer looking at a passive approach, but we are very much looking to actively engage with students as we head into the fall here. So another great question that's continually come up is how do I get in the sneak peek Zoom? I'm going to pick on Sharon Watts here as an example in a way that I apologize. We are conscious that there have been some issues with the Synergy platform and the communication vehicle that is embedded in it as we've made that transition over the summer. There are a lot of folks that are working very hard at upper levels beyond Ashburton to rectify those problems. But we do recognize that when teachers sent out those emails yesterday using the Synergy platform, which should in theory have gotten us to almost every single parent's email address, that wasn't the case. And so we're working through some Synergy-based issues. But one of the upgrades that we've done, and this is within the hour, is that we are going to be emailing. The one component that we know is working right now across the board is the student mcpsmd.net email account. And so in my previous communications, I said that when you come to sneak peek with your children, and again, I want to cue it on that language, you will come with your child. Please bring your child to sneak peek tomorrow. You're going to use their mcpsmd.net credential to log into the Zoom. We are in the process of sending those links directly to students. We are inboxing them in their Gmail account. So tomorrow, I want you to picture yourself using that beautiful brand new touchscreen Chromebook that's in your child's hand, having them log into their Gmail account and being able to access the direct link to their Zoom right there. We're trying to make this as seamless and as simple as possible for everyone. And again, we want to thank the parents who gave us some feedback on how that might look earlier in our new parent meeting. So again, you're going to come into the sneak peek, the Zoom there. If you continue to have problems accessing that, or you're just not getting the communications, or you don't find it in your student's Gmail account tomorrow, please reach out to Ms. Locke or Mrs. Reese. They can help you with that. And again, their information is going to be provided here in a second. So this is another big one. And you heard, if you listened to the Board of Ed meeting yesterday, some questions about recording of lessons. So I want to say that where we are right now with the recording of lessons is that yes, lessons will be recorded. And there's a couple of reasons that those lessons will be recorded. One is if we had students in the building in a brick and mortar setting, they have access to the learning because of the fact they're seated in the classroom. Unfortunately, in an online setting, we know that families are navigating circumstances that may be difficult. We know that not all students may be accessible for learning at the set times that are in our schedule. And so we are required to provide access to that learning. One of the vehicles that MCPS is using is the recording of those lessons. The lesson in its entirety is not going to be recorded. It's just the main components, the main modeling, the main whole group lesson component. Those will then be made available to students through the MyMCPS classroom for 3 days, for 72 hours. After the 72 hours, the link to that lesson will disappear. It will no longer work. So we want to make sure that people understand that, yes, there will be lessons recorded. I'm going to talk in a second about attendance, but I also want to talk about parents who may want to opt their children out of being recorded on that lesson itself. MCPS has provided a vehicle for you to opt out your child. You would do that after you log into the Parent View account. The default setting for students in Zoom is that their video is off, as is the audio. So by default, they're already in a position where they're not going to be recorded. But parents who opt their children out, they will not be a part of that in terms of that recording. Their camera will be off and their microphone will be off during the portion of time that it is being recorded. You'll get more information about that. It's coming through. And again, there's a form. You just have to click a box through the authorizations that you do in the Parent View portal. So with that, I want to be clear about a couple of other things. Anytime a child is working one-on-one with a teacher in a Zoom, be it a breakout room or in the main room, we need parental consent for that. And those people will be reaching out to you well in advance. We will not have our teachers, for their own safety, but also for your child's, making sure that we are not working one-on-one. And if consent is authorized, that session will also be recorded. So we do want to be very clear about that. That's a circumstance where we will be recording lessons if consent is granted. But we won't be recording a lot of the small group breakouts or those types of lessons because those are more interactive dialogues with the teacher. So we want to be clear about what that recording entails. Moving on, another question that we often get is will there still be special education and ESOL, or what we call ESL? And the answer is absolutely yes. We are required by law to provide both, and we will be providing both. If you have a child that has a disability, you will be contacted by your child's case manager to set up a meeting to review what's called the IDLP. Basically, it's a conversion of the IEP, the goals, the supports, the accommodations, into what's called an individualized distance learning plan. Even if you had one in the springtime, we need to connect with you to update that because the spring approach is different than the fall approach. And so that's where you'll kind of see the translation of the IEP into a document that matches the online school setting. So your child's case manager will be in touch with you there. For ESOL, not only will there be ESOL supports as we've traditionally seen them, but our ESOL teachers are going to be implementing components of Benchmark, which is the new literacy curriculum for many of our students, called English Language Development Lessons. So there's a nice way that they're marrying the ESOL support and instruction with the literacy instruction. So yes, there will still be ESOL in special education. So attendance has come up a lot. So attendance, obviously, in a brick and mortar setting, if the kid is sitting in the seat, we have an idea that the kid is in class with us. So attendance is going to look a little bit different in our online school. At the elementary level, attendance will be taken twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. If a child is present on Zoom, that counts as them as being in attendance. If a child's not on Zoom, but they're completing work asynchronously, meaning they're working independently and the teacher can see through the classroom that they're submitting assignments or they're participating in message boards or other activities, then that would also count as them being present for the day because, again, they're completing the work. There's a third way that students can be counted as being present. So if we don't see them on the message boards or in the lesson, and we don't see them in Zoom, there might be something going on with the family. That's where the student would access that recorded portion of the lesson and complete any related work. You as the parent would then have the ability to complete a very simple Google form that said, my son or daughter did this work, therefore, and it just checks the box. Miss Lynch, Miss Barcelona in the main office would get a message from that Google form and they would change the status of that child for that day to present. It's really critical. We're still having to maintain under MSDE and under the law, making sure that we're following up with attendance. Now, if you as a parent know of an absence or you know that your child will be absent, you're traveling or the child is sick for a couple of days, definitely, as we always have, please email your child's teacher and the staff in the front office to make them aware of it. If we as the school start to notice attendance concerns, I want you to understand, we'll reach out to you to find out if there's anything we can do to support. We understand, again, that these are very unique circumstances that we're living and learning in right now. And we're going to make sure that we work with you to figure out a plan that's going to work best for your family and for your student. So attendance will look a little bit different. For the middle school and high school friends that are on the call right now, it will look similar to the way that it always has at middle and high school, where they're going to take attendance by period. And that's something that's a little bit different. We don't have periods throughout the course of the day, but we're going to be doing that with our elementary staff twice a day. So we have this other major question, especially recently, that's come up. Where can I go for technology support? So it depends on what support you need, but there are a number of places that you can go. If you have not yet received an email with your Parent View activation information, you can call the number on the screen. And I do want you to know that we are sending this presentation with this information out to the community. Some of it is repetitive to the emails that I've been sending through the week, but there's a hotline that you can call, and I believe their office, they're open. Don't quote me on this, even though we're on YouTube and we're recording it. Somewhere between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. They're extending their hours to support folks in getting their technology needs met. You can also email community tech support at mcpsmd.org for support with that. If we've been running into a problem, and I as a parent went through this and it was rectified pretty quickly, where I got my 2 Parent View login emails, and I registered one student, but I was having difficulty, what they say, connecting one student, one of my children, to my account. If that's the issue, simply email Miss Lynch or Miss Barcelona. There used to be a form that they filled out, but as of today, they have received training on how to rectify the problem themselves, and so they're going to be able to do that really quickly. We've already had a couple of parents who have reached to us, we've rectified the problem, and we are moving on. If you need assistance with your child's Google, their Gmail, their mcpsmd.net account information, contact Ms. Walker in the Media Center. She can support you with that. All parents should have received updated information regarding their student login information with some information about the Student View platform as well earlier in the week. If that's not the case, definitely reach out to Ms. Walker. For returning parents, I do want you and your students to know the credentials and the passwords are the same as they were last year. That's one thing they have not changed from last year to this year, and that's to help make sure students have a seamless experience as they come into the school year. And then I also want to show you that MCPS is providing some wonderful webinars here. So there's in the link here, I'm going to see if it can load up really quickly. They're providing some links to some webinars, live sessions and recorded sessions that you can register for and attend as a parent on getting started with the Parent View platform, which is essentially your one-stop shop for information. It's where you update your contact information, your emergency contacts, and others. That's that annual verification of information piece. That's where you're going to input your health data and so many other things. They've got some sessions that are still available this week and even into the next week on unpacking that digital backpack, accessing Zoom meetings, supporting students with MyMCPS Classroom assignments and navigating MyMCPS Classroom. Do also know that we're going to be working with our community through the sneak peek tomorrow, and you'll hear information from your teachers on a tutorial. So whereas sneak peek in the past was about dropping off the paper towels you were donating and putting the school supplies into the student's desk, it's a little bit different this year. We are good on paper towels as far as I know, since there's only about 4 or 5 of us that work regularly in the building. So we want to make sure that the time that we're spending at that sneak peek is more about orienting students and parents to where they need to be and what they need to do to start successfully on Monday, August 31st. So again, sneak peek tomorrow, but there's a lot of access for technology here. So let me see, so, there we go. So technology support, we're moving on. And that actually rounds out the main questions that I have. So what I'm going to do is stop my screen share, and I'm going to jump back into the chat. So again, if you have questions as they pop up, please feel free to enter them into the chat. So I'm going to start at the top. I may have answered some of these questions, but I'm going to try to see if I can work my way through them. So no, students will not need to go to different Zoom links. They're primarily going to be using one Zoom. We heard you parents loud and clear from the spring. As a parent in the system, it works for me this way too. I'm hoping my kid's school does the same thing. I'll find out tomorrow when they do their sneak peek if I can join that. But we are limiting the Zoom links. For some students, that might mean 1 or 2. It might be 1, 2, or 3, but no more than that, and that's in very unique circumstances. During the 90-minute lunch, can students receive instruction or support? The answer right now is no. The reason that is because that is an equity issue. If we find that there are changes that are made to those parameters, we will certainly speak with you about that. It could be that there's some changes made for students with disabilities or others if there was an agreement with the parent, but it would have to be unique circumstances at this point. Yes, I did say that about homework that this will include fifth graders. So the concept of homework is that we have them for a period of time in a building that we're working with them. What we're trying to do is provide additional time throughout the day for them to complete assignments independently. So homework shouldn't look like homework as it traditionally has, but that work will still be completed just at different times of the day. That's again to give you time with your kids who have been learning a lot. And we understand again that you might be involved in some management of this learning. We want to make sure that you have that time. The additional homework, again, to clarify, the homework will be there, but it won't be that your child is signing off at 3:15 and then working for an additional 2 hours on assignments. We do want to limit that because we also have to remember that we want to make sure that students feel engaged, but they also have assignments that they're going to be completed again independently, including that PM on Wednesdays where the students are working for the most part independently. We want to make sure that they have assignments and information that they're working through. I see that some of the questions are being answered by Ms. Reese, Ms. Rubin, and others during the chat. So I'm just going to try to synthesize what I'm seeing. So what's the difference between My MCPS Classroom, Canvas, Synergy, Parent View, Student View? And there's probably 3 or 4 more that we're not naming. This is a great question. So let me see if I can work through the soup here. The My MCPS Classroom is also the same thing as Canvas. They're the same thing, they just come by a different name. Canvas is a large product. My MCPS is the version that MCPS purchased from our friends at Canvas. Essentially, that's your one-stop shop for content and information. That's where the assignments will be posted. That's where the resources will be posted for both parents and students. So students have access and a login for that. Let's see. Synergy. So Synergy is the new, again, the product, the company that oversees our new student information system. So before we had multiple systems internally and externally that we were using for communication, for student information, for financial purchasing, for procurement that went along with that, for the IEPs, for everything. Everything is now being brought under one umbrella in Synergy, which has multiple components. For parents, the 2 ones that you want to know about are Parent View, which is where you complete all your registration information, your health assessment forms, the opt-out that I spoke about regarding the recordings. It also is a portal for us to send communications to you, which again, I'll admit, has not gone off without a hitch this week, but we will get it working. Thank you for being patient. And there's a version called Student View. So my middle and high school friends on the call, this is probably more relevant to you all. This is where your children will see their schedule, their grades, updated information. They'll have an ability to communicate with their teachers through that. So they tend to use that more at the middle and high school, whereas we at the elementary school don't necessarily use it in the same way. So your students may not really need to get involved with the My Student View, or the Student View platform, but you as a parent could see your child's classes, you could see their teachers and all that kind of information there as well. So let me see, what are the expectations for little kids to work independently? We will get them there. There will be some independent time. Again, early in the year, we're going to be building out those routines and procedures with students. Again, not only are we having to teach them curriculum and content, but we're going to have to teach them how to operate in an online setting. So that is something that we will be doing throughout the course of especially the first few weeks. I agree with you about parents not being able to fully supervise. And that, as I said at the beginning, is the goal. MCPS would like us to get to a point where the approach to learning is self-contained within that day. That also relates to the comments I've been making about homework. But we really want to make sure that we understand that you all are working from home. Some of us are even teaching from home and principaling from home with our kids in the background. So my staff will have my son in the background here tomorrow as I try to both attend his sneak peek and meet with my staff to go over updated information about recording and attendance. So I understand the equilibrium we're trying to achieve here as we move through this. So we will get there, I can promise you that. And if we will make changes along the way as needed. So great question. Which should we log in every day first? Zoom. Get your kid on Zoom. Instruction starts at 9 o'clock. But if you'll notice in the conversation from the board yesterday, and also in that instructional schedule that I sent you today, your child should start logging in around 8:45, 8:50. because we really want that time, that instructional time, to start promptly at 9 o'clock. For those of you that have been with us, you know that we used to open our doors at 8:40, and then again at 8:50, you'd hear another bell. That was to allow students to get in so they were ready to start learning right at 9 o'clock. So we recommend really getting them into a schedule. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of water. This was our message in the read aloud with Miss Reese last week, right? We've got to start getting into that actual bedtime routine again, so that we're up in time to get dressed, to have breakfast, and then to be ready to go on Zoom, promptly starting at 9 o'clock. So we do recommend around an 8:45 start there. Let me see here. K-2, so all students have always had Gmail accounts. We have never been in a situation where we've had K-1 students accessing those accounts or those credentials because we've never been online before. So our second graders got some information about that coming into grade 2. I do want to speak to those Gmail accounts. There's a lot of filters on them. They can't email out, that you can't get emails in unless it's something that MCPS has approved. So your students won't be signing up for online poker accounts or accessing YouTube videos that are inappropriate using those accounts. I can promise you that. But one of the things we did say is that we are sending those Zoom links for the sneak peek, and the same Zoom link is also the one they'll use on Monday when they go to class, to those Gmail accounts, as another way for us to help get that information into the hands of our students. So no, your kindergarten and first grade students probably aren't going to be actively checking or writing emails, but it is somewhere where information can be sent to them at the push of a button. I started using those accounts primarily in 2nd through 5th last year to send things like the links to AETV, or to remind them that their patrol application was due. Which reminds me, I want to mention something earlier. We are trying to replicate as many of the in-school experiences as we can with our children. That would include student government, patrols, AETV, clubs. We are working through that. Even instrumental music. As I joked with the last group, I got a memo the other day that says I'm responsible for cleaning the tubas. I don't necessarily know how to clean a tuba or operate it effectively. I'm sure the memo is directing me on how to do that. And then we will be distributing instruments that we have to students and families that need them when we do that secondary round of materials distribution. So if you land with a tuba, you're welcome. It was probably me that ended up cleaning it. This is other duties as assigned in the online virtual principal world. All right. If you're using your own laptop, are you still able to log into the Zoom classes? Yes, you are. We don't, if it's your laptop, that's one thing. I know that some parents have purchased other devices for their students to use, and that's totally fine. What you want to try to avoid is mingling your personal account with your child's MCPSMD.net account. And that's why MCPS provided every student with a touch Chromebook in K-5. And again, every parent that came through, even if they said, no, we're going to use this, we said, cool, here's your Chromebook though. We always want to make sure that you have a backup device, if nothing else. So yes, you are absolutely are able to use other devices as well. So how are PE, art, music, instrumental music, and other things going to work? So obviously we can't play basketball or volleyball virtually, but there are going to be standards-based lessons and guidance that's provided to students in those areas. I was talking with a PE teacher yesterday about some of the lessons they had to do with striking. So in the gym, we would have kids hitting baseballs off of a tee or slapping pucks around the gym with a hockey stick. We're not going to do that in your living room, I promise you. They are adapting lessons, as they are in all subject areas, to make sure that students still have the instruction and the experience, are still meeting the standards, but in a slightly different way that preserves your furniture and fine china. So more information will come about from that. You'll see that in real time starting next week as we move into the lessons themselves. So I spoke about attendance. If you're trying to come to Sneak Peek tomorrow, trying to log in from your iPhone would only work if you were logging in on your iPhone using your child's MCPSMD.net account. One of the reasons that we're very strict about that at MCPS is that we don't allow for students to change the name as we see it on the screen. It also allows our teachers to prevent outsiders from entering into the classroom. So we use the wait room feature. We also use those authenticated accounts. Given that you're meeting with the teachers tomorrow, you're going to need to use those students' accounts to be able to do so. Can a student decide not to use video and only interact audio? Absolutely, that's totally fine. It is acceptable under MCPS policy to do so. Even if the child doesn't opt out, they would still be able to turn their camera off. If at all possible, we want our students interacting live. So, you as the parent can help your child navigate that, but absolutely they can turn it off. So we're going to be providing information about the 5-6, the 4-5, the other Eureka math classes, benchmark and ELC in the coming weeks. That'll be a primary focus of our back to school night. So that more information will be coming about that. So the homeroom page, as we said, that information will be provided tomorrow at the sneak peek. You'll get information about the MyMCPS classroom and some other things. Let me see. So regarding information that could have been or should have been covered last spring, MCPS rolled out the Summer Boost offering to kind of provide that bridge between missed content from the spring to the fall. But schools are also tasked with looking at students who might need recovery. As we go through, we're going to be doing some data collection and others. We'll handle those, the needs for those students internally. And as needs arise, we might provide them with intervention, targeted small group work, or other to help them get caught up. So I talked about the Chromebooks. I talked about, so the question about what does the day look like, I spoke to early. You'll get the slides from this presentation. You were also emailed a copy of the instructional schedule, which the language will match the MCPS recovery plan, as you'll see in terms of what the required minimums and what the parameters are for elementary students. Will a teacher be able to view a student's computer screen while the student is doing online work, e.g. with Cami, to support them in the process? Yes, the teachers do have the capability to do what's called screen sharing. So they can navigate that with students, just like I was able to share my screen with you today. Students are going to be able to share their screens with teachers as well. So students will get training on how to do that, and it will be kind of on an as-needed basis. That also helps with discourse and dialogue of students throughout the course of a lesson. Great question. So those of you that have been around the block a few times know that we do a lot of assessment that's required by the federal government, the state government, MCPS. We use things like MAP-R, the MAP-M assessments. We use the assessments, the state assessments, this, that, and the other thing. More information to come. Yes, we are being told that we have to use those. We're trying to figure out how to navigate the test security protocols, given that we're sending them live to students in their living rooms. So Ms. Elaraj will probably be somebody that reaches out to you about that. She's our school testing coordinator this year. So what those assessments are, what they will look like, and who will be accessing them, all of that is going to be determined in the very near future. That would cover some of the questions that came up around tests and IEPs in the lower grades. That guidance would come from the case manager. None of the apps are working. Is this expected? So if you're having difficulty with the Chromebook that you picked up, I would say contact Miss Walker first to see if there's something that she can do to help troubleshoot. The apps themselves may just not be live yet, but we'll see some of that change as the school year starts. Do we need to, oh, I love this question about the supplies. Yeah, so I was in Staples not too long ago, picking up some crayons for some of our students that were working over the summer. And Staples had it all set up like we were coming back to school. They had recommended supply lists. They even had taken the liberty of bagging them all up for you. Unfortunately, that may have been a little premature. Given the shift to online, there's not a significant need for student supplies. I do want to step back and say that supply list that I sent is personal organizational materials. Anything your child needs to access the learning, we're going to provide to them. I had a great question from a parent earlier in the day about art supplies. If there is a specific art supply that you need or your child needs to complete a task that we are assigning, we're going to get it to you. I joked about Mr. Roth. He has a very particular style of colored pencil that he likes, manufactured by a company called Blick, who has a warehouse in Detroit, Michigan. I randomly happened to be in Detroit with my family last year on a trolley, and we drove right by the Blick factory. So I know exactly where they came from. I'm the one that signs off on those purchase orders. If he says to me, Greg, I need those in the hands of my kids, we're going to put them in the hands of your children. We are likely having another material distribution in September for you to be able to come through and pick those up. and those freshly cleaned tubas as well. So more information coming about that. If you got a touchscreen Chromebook and the touchscreen is not working, again, email Ms. Locke. We may be able to exchange it, or Ms. Reese. We may be able to exchange it or figure out what's going on with it. So I love this. How will enrichment and other such programs be handled? As I said before, and I want to be clear, we are home to some pretty unique programs and offerings for our students. We have the compacted, what used to be called the compacted mathematics course. We have what's called the enriched literacy course. It's a literacy program that's not offered at all the schools in MCPS, but we have such a high need for that programming at Ashburton. And thank you to Ms. Elleraj, who has been a phenomenal leader in the last, I think, 4 years in working with the Office of Accelerated and Enriched Instruction to make sure that we have that programming for our students. I want to say thank you to our staff development teachers, to the administrators that have been working with us over the last couple of years. We've been working really hard to break down barriers and open up opportunities to kids. And then when Dr. Smith says all means all, these are our hallmarks of why we believe that it is absolutely true that all means all. So those enrichment programs are offered to more students than they ever have been before. They are continuing, even though we're going to an online program. In addition to that, the Board of Education sought the approval for the benchmark literacy curriculum, which is going to knock your socks off in terms of the level of rigor in benchmark over what you may have seen in previous reading programs from MCPS. These are research-based curriculums, both Eureka and Benchmark, and we're thrilled that we're still being able to offer all of them to our students. So enrichment will continue, as well as some of those other enrichment offerings that may not be academically oriented, but we've traditionally had. Like I said, student government, patrols, AETV, many of those types of clubs, we're going to be working through how we can provide them in a virtual world. We even have a memorandum of understanding with our OASIS Tutors program. So those of you that are familiar with our OASIS Tutors program, we're going to again be offering them. We're working through the legal and technical hurdles right now, but the county has signed off on it. And we just need to come up with a way that we can ensure everyone's privacy and safety while still offering students and families those opportunities. Yes, so as we're nearing the 10-minute remaining mark, I love this question from Enrique Milan. If health conditions improve, is there any chance that we're going to return to school before January 29th? So the board said very clearly yesterday, we will not be returning to schools until the second semester. And if so, it may be in a hybrid or other approach. So there's a reevaluation that will happen around the end of the first marking period. However, they also left the door open to the possibility of bringing smaller groups in. Discrete special education programs probably could be considered, students with disabilities, ESOL, students who are heavily impacted. There's a potential for that to happen sooner than that. But again, I want to go back to the language that the board used yesterday to say that the reevaluation will occur around the end of the first marking period. So yes, there's the spirit of flexibility that we aren't, if we had the power to know what was going to happen in semester 2, we probably were going to know what happened on March 13th a little bit before we did. And we would have been better planned for the delivery of continuity of learning in the spring. Or we would have worn masks way earlier in this game than we ended up wearing, and then we'd still be in the building together. So with that, I say that you will receive constant updates from MCPS and from me regarding what it may look like. You've also known me heard me inserting or read my communications where I insert little caveats. So you have a homeroom teacher today. If we return to school, that may not be the same homeroom teacher. We may have to rethink class groupings. I'm sure some of you saw the Board of Ed videos where they took staff into, or the MCPS videos where they took staff into College Gardens Elementary and kind of saw what it would look like in an elementary classroom with social distancing guidelines in place. Obviously, we have about 900 students. If I was only able to bring 12 to 15 of them into a classroom on any given day, I need about 3 or 4 more buildings. And while our PTA has been fantastic advocates for construction projects and that wonderful modular building that we have, I don't think they want to get into the business of trying to open up another 900-person building so that we can all come back simultaneously. I say that to say that whatever happens in the second semester, will be clearly articulated in plenty of time to all staff and students. I even have an MOU between the board and the association that represents me that says that they're going to give us 30 days notice on any type of change that happens like that, so that I can adequately prepare my community for it. So all folks are saying, you know, we're going to reevaluate if and when we go back into the buildings. So yeah, that's that question I just answered. They may not have the same teacher when they come back into the building. They may, who knows? You know, we're going to make sure that our kids, again, we see a transition. We're going to make sure that our kids, their social and emotional needs are taken care of, you know, to the nth degree, because that is our priority. And that's why you see us prioritizing things like social and emotional learning and the morning meeting structures in that instructional schedule. So a question about revisiting how Wednesdays will work. So all students, and again, I'm gonna, not only am I gonna answer this question, but I'm gonna clarify something that there's been a misconception about. And again, for my middle and high school friends, I'm only speaking elementary right now. So when the proposal was made for the schedule to the board, they adopted this 4.5-day model, with the Wednesday afternoon being reserved for student support and family engagement, for professional development for teachers, and for a little bit of additional planning time for staff as well. And again, that planning time is so critical, you know, right now, especially as we enter into this new realm with multiple platforms, multiple new curriculums in language arts and in mathematics. So what's your typical Wednesday will look like? In fact, I'll say every Wednesday, unless there's a holiday where schools and offices are closed. Every child in elementary school will have a reading block or a literacy block and a math block every Wednesday morning. Now, during Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, your child may have reading in the morning and math in the afternoon, or vice versa, or some combination thereof. What you will see all students will have is a very similar looking block and schedule on Wednesday mornings. Now, there was information that, and I want to pause there to say, on Friday, September the 4th, it's the first half day of the year. So half days aren't traditionally what they always have been. But what that means is your child will log into Zoom in the morning, and their live instruction will stop at 11:30. They will be off in the afternoon. On a Wednesday, it's a little bit different. Their live instruction still stops at 11:30. They then go to lunch and they have that break, but they may have some independent work in the afternoon. They may have some enrichment opportunities in the afternoon. So that's the typical Wednesday. Now I want to point you to something. There's communications about what's called the modified calendar. This is more relevant to our friends in middle and high school. When they have a situation like they do in the second week of school, where the Labor Day holiday cancels the Monday classes, there's some scheduling changes where they kind of, I think they move the Monday to the Wednesday so that the kids get a full day of live instruction, where they may have missed that on the Wednesday on a typical week in the middle or high school. What I need you to hear from me is this, though, at the elementary school: our Wednesday is our Wednesday and always will be our Wednesday. It is going to be the same no matter what. I will always communicate any type of schedule changes to you. I know it seems a little early, but I even sent that out in one of my emails today about Friday, September 4th and Monday, September 7th. I want to make sure people clearly understand. This is akin to those snow days where people don't hear the messages over the radio, and I'm in the building, but the schools are closed, and I get that knock at the door at 8:45 asking me if there's school today. We're going to avoid that snow day type of visit that I get sometimes in the morning, to make sure that you guys have the most up-to-date information as always. So I think I covered that. The questions have been winding down in the chat. So I just want to take another minute or two to make kind of a final statement here. First off, some of you have been with me 3 times today. And first off, I have to say it's been great to see you. You know, one of the things that I have struggled with personally and professionally is that on March 13th, the job that I signed up for changed dramatically. And I've been joking with a lot of people that I've found out that on a personal and professional level, I'm a free range principal. And I never liked being in my office. I would go to work early. I'd get my paperwork and email and reports and all that kind of stuff done. I'd meet with Marnie Jacobs early in the morning. I'd meet with the admin team early in the morning. And then I was out and about in classrooms and planning. I was on the playground. I had my, chicken bites and spinach for lunch with the kids in the cafeteria. I was hanging out in the after school programs. That has been the hardest thing for me to move from a free range principal to kind of a caged principal. Although in some sense, maybe I like to think of it as I'm veal now. I think that's a good thing. You know, so we're all adapting. We're all adapting. Our teachers very much are phenomenal, whether it's online, in person, or in any other format. What's going to transcend all of this is their teaching, which has always been and always will be phenomenal. We will learn the platforms, we will learn the curriculum, we will learn it all together, and then you know, we'll see what our teachers have always done shine through. I have to say, those of you that had the experience with Summer Boost, once we kind of took those handcuffs from the spring off at the system level, they shined, and we got a lot of positive feedback. Thank you to Ms. Rubin for running that program. Thank you to all the teachers who were so giving of their time over the summer to make that a reality. And now we're going to take that and beef it up even more. So, you know, my joy about the start of the school year, I don't get that opportunity to stand out front of the building and see all of you as you chase buses and take pictures. I don't get the traditional, you know, Bradley and Preston Bendit photo that I get every year at these moments where, you know, we take the same photo every year in almost the same exact location and position to kind of see how we've all grown. Bradley and Preston have gotten a lot taller, and my hair has gotten a lot thinner. That's about all that's changed in those photos, but I'm really going to miss that kind of stuff. But we're going to find other ways to connect as a community, to keep those traditions alive, and to really celebrate the spirit of Ashburton that has always been there. So I do want to thank you for your time today. As I shared, we'll be sending out the link to this video and to the presentation to you as another resource that you can use. If there's something you want to rewind to, you can certainly go back to it. But I want to first off say thank you for asking questions. Your questions are what guide us in our work. Those questions are what make us go find answers, because we all see it from our different lenses, and you as parents are stakeholders as much as anyone else. I've drawn on my experiences as a parent in MCPS to kind of think through how I can make this work for my parents at Ashburton. Our teachers are very much doing the same, and we appreciate your patience and your flexibility as we're getting this system up and running. With that, it is 7 o'clock on the dot. I want to say thank you to everyone for being here today. I cannot wait to see you all live. And I think that what I've learned today from these sessions that I've done with parents is there's a market for this type of communication. And so I'm actually thinking that we'll be doing more of this as the year goes on. Some of them formal and some of them informal, where you can just drop by and ask me questions. Because I don't get to see you out front by the flagpole at arrival or in the car loop at dismissal, where we got a lot of that question answering done. So thank you all very much. Thank you to the teachers who are with us today, the administrators. Ms. Reese, as always, it's a pleasure to work with you. Ms. Rubin, Ms. Elaraj. I'm going to let you guys go. It's been a long day for everybody. But thank you all for making this such a seamless transition for us, and we look forward to supporting you and your students through the year. Everybody do that awkward Zoom wave.